Hmm. Welcome to the Esoteric Footnotes. Welcome back, Goblins! You're listening to the Esoteric Book Club, and tonight I have two special guests with me. Returning fan favorite, Carly, the Village Tarot Witch, and someone new, Savannah, that witch up the holler. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
So, what we're talking about tonight is the idea that you could possibly haunt yourself. Now, the whole origin of this idea came from when I was reading the book Ancestral Whispers, and there were ideas that soul, spirit, and all the things that make you who you are not necessarily just one thing, and that they can fracture and splinter into different pieces. And then, if you can fracture whatever it is that animates you, can you potentially see yourself as a ghost? Now, Carly, I believe you have some experience with this.
I do. I do indeed. This is one of my favorite theories because, as we all know, I heavily practice shadow work, which is the process of exploring the hidden away parts of yourself, showing those parts love because all of you deserve love, and in turn, kind of integrating it and becoming a more complete human being, blah, blah, blah. But the reason that I like this theory is that it kind of goes hand in hand with shadow work, in that there have been a lot of conversations where we talk about a moment of trauma happening to a person and your soul kind of splintering off to protect itself. It's almost like if you think about the way that we dissociate with like TikTok or anything like that, where it's just like the scrolling to numb your mind, excuse me. Um, it's
Mhm.
that kind of thing where your soul's just like, and I'm out. Bye. So that part of you breaks off. And I have had an experience where I believe I interacted, or I believe that I was the ghost in this scenario. Like, I didn't see myself. I think I was actively the ghost. But I have also had plenty of circumstances when I was stressed and shadow figures started popping up around the house, or the hauntings would amplify. And that would have been me, and not necessarily like, is it paranormal? Yes. But also, the root cause was because I was distressed. Right. So, do you want me to tell you about when I was the ghost, or are
Absolutely.
we okay? So, I lived in Florida for several years. I spent most of my life in Texas, but when I moved to Florida, I moved into a very haunted house, right? That move triggered a lot of my personal growth journey. It's how I discovered tarot, it's how I discovered this whole world. And it's also where I experienced the heaviest amounts of trauma that led to my PTSD diagnosis. So I have a lot of complicated feelings about Florida, and specifically my house in Florida, because I had a lot of freedom there. I loved my life there. I loved my friends there. But I also experienced a lot of deep emotional pain while I was there. So all of these things are happening at the same time. And I ended up making the decision to leave my house in Florida and move in with my parents, me and my kids. And that's where I'm living now. And the house in Florida was about to be sold. And I was having a lot of feelings about it because I loved that house. Even like, I know all of the reasons why I chose to leave, but I still have a deep emotional attachment to that house and my life there. What happened is I had I cried a lot one night because I don't know if the closing was about to happen or something, but like either way, that chapter was about to come to a close. And I had this moment where I was like, I can never go back to this part of my life. It is done. Even if I moved back to Florida, would it be good? Maybe, but it wouldn't be the same, blah, blah, blah. And I went to sleep after that, and I ended up having this dream. And I say dream with a capital D because I don't know if you've ever had dreams that feel like more than a dream, but that's definitely what this one was. And oh, a theme I feel like in a lot of hauntings is like when people start doing renovations or things like that, the spirits get like angry about it. So in my dream, I was in my house in Florida and it was empty the way that I knew it was because I was living in there. None of my things were there, but I was walking through my house and noticing the paint touch ups that had been done, which is like a very specific thing. I was standing in my dining room, and that is the room that I used to film a lot of my videos in. So if you go back like way back, there'll be like shelves with all my oddities on it. And that was my space. We didn't really eat there. I just used it for my stuff. But there were a few spots on the ceiling where I had painted the walls and I got paint on the ceiling and I never fixed it because if I am doing a home improvement project, it's usually in like a fit of creative energy that I need to do this immediately. And once that fit of passion is finished, I almost never circle back around to like fix my mistakes. They just live there forever. So I was walking through and I was touching the walls and I felt the texture like I was awake and physically there. Like I could feel it on my fingertips, the texture of the walls. And I looked up and saw that they had painted over this spot where the paint roller had hit the ceiling. And I was really, really sad about it. And then like in the dream, like I'm still in the dream, but I stopped and I was like, I wonder if another living person had been present, could they have picked up on my energy? Would they have been able to sense that I was upset in this space because it's my house? And it's not my house anymore. It is officially somebody else's house. But it was a really interesting moment that got me thinking a lot more about, can we, in fact, be the ghost in the room while we're still alive? Excuse me.
That almost sounds like unintentional astral projection.
I was gonna say that. That sounds like astral travel.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm. Yep.
Now, talking about seeing shadow people and things like that, it makes me wonder if this weird I have a shadow cat that is in my apartment. I have no idea why. I only ever catch it out of the corner of my eye, and it's always going from like one room to another. And I assume it's my regular cat, except my regular cat is sitting right beside me. So it kind of makes me wonder if that cat isn't necessarily a manifestation of myself.
It could be. I've never thought about that. I would be a cat if I could be a cat.
It is a possibility. I have to apologize. My Wi-Fi is super glitchy, y'all, so I'm if I'm going in and out or I'm not catching you, I just let me throw that out there. I have heard of like legit ghost animals though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Have you had any other, like, cats or anything that have, like, passed on or
that's the weird thing. Yes, but the ghost cat showed up before that cat passed away.
Huh.
Hmm.
So it's not directly that specific cat. It may also be a manifestation of someone else who I lost at that time. So,
Okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I've got my wheels turning on that one. I don't know.
Savannah, you said you had stories about other ghost animals?
Oh man, we when I was a kid, one of our dogs after she passed was very much still there for like at least a solid decade. Would still be running around where she used to run around. We would hear her circling and like doing her normal thing. Like it just kind of kept up.
I had a dog who used to visit, she passed, and she used to come and visit me pretty regularly, and I would feel my bed indent where, like, because she would sleep in the same spot every night, so I'd be laying in bed and I could
Oh,
feel her, like, feel her climb into bed with me. I loved it because it was sweet that she was still around and still checking in. So,
comforting.
Yeah, yeah, it is comforting because it's like, I think animals have as much of a soul as we have. It's just a different manifestation of it.
For sure. Now, Savannah, I believe you have a story where you physically saw yourself as a ghost, correct?
Yes, yes, I did.
Would you mind sharing that with us?
So, the abridged version, I guess, I experienced significant uh, trauma as a child in our home. And it's interesting. We also, while that trauma was occurring, like actively as a small child, we had a poltergeist. We had an active, like, psychokinetic entity manifest in the home. And it went away once those abusers left the home. But as a teenager, I really just hadn't dealt with anything. I was having a very, very hard time, and I attempted suicide. I was home alone at the time, and during this attempt, my bedroom door opened up, and nobody was standing there. And I looked up, there was nobody there, and I just thought, maybe someone is showing up to escort me along. Um, at least that's what I was hoping it was. I hope it was hoping someone was walking in to take me out. Um, but obviously that didn't happen. I woke up and we move on. But as an adult, I moved back into that home with my family. And at that point in time, I had not dealt with a lick of trauma, didn't want to, guard completely up. For some reason, I didn't think this was going to be an issue moving back into that house. Well, it was an issue, and it was just smacked me in the face as soon as I got there, and it was like, "We're gonna deal with this now." Um, and we began hearing a lot of weird things, lots of, like, very just residual kind of energy going on. Um, and I tried to deal with that and tried to cleanse the space and everything. But I realized the more I was cleansing the space, the more things were, like, ramping up in my own self. Um, and then we started to hear what sounded like bass, just like thumping, like in the other room. And it was coming from my bedroom as a child. And I had these crappy speakers when I was a teenager that I used to just blare music on. Um, and it was just this terrible bass coming through the house all the time. And that's what it sounded like. And I tried to ignore it, but then my children were hearing it as well. And they started to get scared. And they were like, "What is that, mommy? I'm scared. What's going on? What is this noise?" And I was like, "Well, crap. I need to figure out what's going on because my kids are scared." So it was one day in particular, I realized the bass had a rhythm and I recognized it. And it was a specific song, and it was the song that was playing the night that I had tried to kill myself. And so I got to the door and I'm just like shaking, trying to get to the doorknob, like I can't handle it. And I open the door and look down, and it is a full apparition of myself at 15, laying on the ground in the same place where I did make that attempt. And I just lost it, I just like, well, I can't deal with this right now. What the hell just happened? You just shut the door and like took me a while to deal with it. But yeah. Yeah, I saw a full body apparition. When I say apparition, I mean like I am a medium. I see ghosts. It the same way that I would see any ghost was myself. That same kind of wispy, not fully physical form.
Now, I'm curious, did you see spirits before your attempt?
Yes, my whole life. My whole life.
Now, how did you go about rectifying your emotional state as a result of seeing yourself?
Whew. It was a journey. This took place at the same time when my husband and I were actively leaving the church. So it was a lot all at once. And like one of the first things I had to do was be open and honest with myself about the trauma and the physical and sexual abuse that I had endured, and I had to tell for the first time. And and even having that experience and seeing me really made it click, like, "Oh my gosh, like, a child, like, it's me, but it's a child, is still so hurt, and someone needs to stand up for her." And so I was able to speak for the first time, and the first person I told was my sister, and then we went together to tell my parents, and then eventually we were able to, like, publicly out this person, um, and really start to heal all of that. But healing the actual physical, like, the real life trauma had to happen before I was able to do any kind of like soul retrieval type work. I really had to like deal with the mundane world of it all first.
Mhm. Mhm. That makes so much sense to me too. I mean, we obviously have different but similar stories, but I also had a moment where mine came through my cards, but they were like, "Hey, hey, you got to deal with this shit, okay? It is time.
Mhm.
You have to face this. You have to face this and it's going to suck and you're going to have to be brave." And I was like, I don't think I want to do
I don't know
that.
if I can.
That sounds terrible. Nothing about that sounds very fun to me. I'd rather just like, can I just keep living in denial? Maybe.
Mhm.
And yeah, they were. I almost feel like sometimes I don't want to say like it's like a calling, but I do think that sometimes you get tapped to deal with things for a reason. What that reason is, don't
Yep.
fucking ask me. I have no idea. It's been terrible. Like,
Yeah. It's
I
not a
don't
good
have a
time.
reason. It's it's not a good time. It is hard. But it is worth it, even though it is hard. But I also feel like being willing to deep dive into not only your trauma, but other people's trauma and like work to understand it helps give you a different perspective of the world around you, including the paranormal,
Absolutely.
because
Mm.
there are so many stories. And I feel like trauma is pretty key to a lot of hauntings. Like maybe not every
Mhm.
single haunting, but like I have only run into like a handful of ghosts that were like, "Nah, I just really liked it here. I was really happy here and I just
Yeah.
wanted to stay." Those are
Yep.
those are few and far between. Most of what I get is like,
Mhm.
"Hey, you're alive. I'm super fucking dead. Do you want to hear about this terrible thing that happened to me?" And I go, "Yeah, I do. What's up? Hit me with it."
Yep.
That's- but
Yep.
yeah, it's interesting when you look at all of that and then start to ask, well, what if this isn't a fucking Victorian ghost in the long nightgown? What if this is someone who could
Mhm.
potentially still be alive? Because if it wasn't you,
Yep.
if that same a set of circumstances happened, but it was a paranormal investigator or someone else in there, they would have assumed that you died, and there would have been
Yeah.
it,
Exactly.
yeah, there wouldn't have been anybody to say no, this is me. Because if that was somebody
Mhm.
other than you, it would have birthed a new haunting legend. Like that story, if
Yeah.
somebody else experienced it, would have added to this haunted lore, which then brings into question, could that take on a life all of its own too? So like You
Yes.
have the moment of trauma. You have the moment of recognizing your trauma, and then you start to ask questions, but the more questions you ask, the more questions you have. It's like, we're here to talk about, can you haunt
Yes.
yourselves? Yeah, you sure can, but also, what else is possible?
Well, that's very similar to the concept of the hungry ghost.
Mhm.
And that is from, and I'm not going to pick a country because honestly, I don't know specifically where it comes from. It's an Asian concept where spirits have to be appeased in some way by their family members.
Mhm,
Otherwise, they
mhm.
start to become predatory. And then the whole idea that these spirits could belong to living current people brings into question the ethics of certain ghost hunting techniques.
Oh,
Oh,
tell me
yes.
more.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree with you, and I wanna hear more. What are like, what, can you give us an example of what ghost hunting techniques you were referring to? Just because 'cause I'm curious.
Specifically, the one that jumped into my mind is antagonizing the spirit, which, if
Oh,
there's a
Yes.
yes.
spirit, especially one manifested from trauma, antagonizing that spirit conceivably could have a trickle down effect back to the origin and the source of that spirit.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
Also, interestingly, hungry ghost could like, could that technically be counted as a form of vampirism? Like, that is technically,
Ooh.
if that's a living being still, could that indeed be, or like that it plays into like the succubus, incubus, anything
Ooh.
that feeds off of the energy of something else. So that's
It's
another
all
interesting.
connected.
It's all connected. That's another interesting thing to consider, though, is that, like, we have labels for things, but if you peel back the label a little bit and peek underneath, it's much more interconnected and than we
Mhm.
probably would have thought. I don't have the answer to any of these things that I just tossed out there for the record. But I'm just curious.
Now, have your experiences helped either of you grow from the experience itself?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. I mean, my entire life trajectory changed.
yeah.
Savannah, could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, like I said, we were in the middle of also leaving the church. Um, we were pastors' kids. We were in ministry ourselves, and I'd always had this fascination with the paranormal, and some of the seedier parts of evangelicalism and the paranormal, and uh, performing exorcisms and all that things. But from a Christian standpoint, um, but I had kind of stepped away from that once I got married, and didn't feel like I could even communicate with spirits anymore. Like I had to cut that off. You're not allowed to do that anymore. We're doing something different now. And having that experience at that time was just so like, no, you know that you were born with this gift and for a purpose, and let's get back on track. This is your life,
Yep,
this is your passion, this is what you're good at, this is why you're here. Do it.
yep.
So it was very like very dramatic. It's very dramatic, but I needed the drama to make some
Uh,
changes.
I
I
need
love
some
that.
clarification there. Did you just say that you had to step away from doing exorcisms?
Yeah. I was sorry, you don't have all the backstory and the Savannah
The
lore.
baffle the
Sorry.
baffle See, I
um,
I knew this already, so I fully tracked, but I was watching the confusion on your face, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be good."
my apologies. Yes. Yes. As a teenager, that was my ministry. That was what I was involved in. It was what I was my mediumship abilities were heavily exploited by the church. And I was drug into spiritual warfare that I should not have been a part of. Um, but once I met my husband, they were, like, a little bit, like, bougier, and they're, like, not into the woo-woo, so you need to, like, back off. We're not doing that. So I stepped away from the paranormal entirely for several years, and it felt like something in me died, honestly, like, having this disconnect from the paranormal altogether was too much. But yes, I did. I was actively involved in, what we call deliverance ministry for many years. So, yeah.
Was it difficult for you to pick your gifts back up after walking away for such a long amount of time?
Oh, it was more difficult than I would have liked. It wasn't super hard. I mean, it was kind of like a muscle memory thing, but there was also this fog that I felt like I had to, like, kinda get through to regain some clarity and retrain myself a little bit to, uh to be able to flow in my gifts again where I had kind of pushed it aside a bit. So it was a little bit difficult. There was some work involved, but not impossible. It's doable. If you've ever shut your gifts off, you can turn them back on.
Yep, I am another living example of that. It's hard, but you can do it. you can you can pick it back up again. It's interesting to me because again, we have different backstories, but similar in several points. The leaving the religions. I didn't have the exorcisms or anything like that, but there is that feeling of like, uh, I don't like the term like this is a calling, and that's my own religious trauma coming into play because in the Mormon church uh they call like church jobs callings, and you're not allowed to say no. You basically have to say if your church leader asks you to do something, it is extending a calling, and you basically have to do it. There's no like I said no once and it was a whole big deal, right? Like so like I don't necessarily enjoy the term calling, but I do feel like I've met a few other people who have had these moments where spirit has made it very clear that like, hey, you got to get your shit together because you have some stuff to do.
Mhm.
And, like I'm like,
Mhm.
fine.
Now, Savannah, have you done exorcisms since coming back to your abilities?
Not since leaving the church, no. I do I have done some basic house cleansings. I don't hold the same belief in the demonic that I had previously, obviously. My viewpoint on that has changed drastically, and I real it's not some like, I don't have a problem being present in that situation. I'm weirdly comfortable in it. Like, if someone is having some really dark, hardcore stuff, yeah, okay. Like, let's show up, I'll talk, whatever. Um,
Mhm.
but it's not something I seek out anymore, and it's not nobody's really gonna come to a self-proclaimed witch rather than a pastor for an exorcism, so
Right. Right. They might though. They might. There's actually a book. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. Her username on Instagram is RH Stavis, and I think it's called like the Modern Exorcist or something like that. It's fascinating though. She talks about it's a very witchy process. She burns like herbs and things like that too as part of her routine. She calls it an exorcism, but
Mhm,
I think it's her own practice, but reading about it and the different types of entities that there are, including some of the ones
mhm,
that will like feed off of people's energy or like attachments and things like that was really eye-opening for me because again, once you remove the label of demon, it's like, okay, is it a
mhm,
demon? I don't really believe in demons. Again, for people who do believe in demons, like I'm not saying it's not real for you. I'm just saying to me, I don't believe in demons, right? But I do believe that there
mhm,
are negative entities out there, and that book was one that I really enjoyed reading because different names and descriptions to things that most people would label as demonic, but is just kind of
Yep.
more like lower level, lower energy type beings. So
Mhm.
it was a
More
really
more
good read.
parasitic than predatory.
Yeah, I would say that there's some in there that are more predatory. But yeah, it's like yeah, but same type of thing, like a growth that needs to be cut off
Yeah.
and removed, you know, like that mole is got some hairs sprouting. It doesn't look very good. You need to let's just let's just cut that bad boy off.
So what exactly have you run into in your practice that people would consider in popular culture a demon, but you see it as something else? Could you describe any of those encounters?
Mhm. Yeah. I had one in Florida. So this thing that I encountered in Florida, I had a close friend of mine called and asked if I would be willing to give them a reading. And they said it was something that was pretty serious and they wanted to come over to the house. I said, of course, you know, so I set aside some time. They came over and they started kind of telling me about this situation. And that part I'm not going to go into because that is not my story to tell. That's their private life, so I'm not going to go into any of that. But what I will say is that my cards very specifically were like, "Hey, eyes on me. Don't get involved in this." Okay? Because at the time I had things weren't as bad as they eventually got, but, like, they weren't great, so I wasn't in the best place to be dealing with something like that. But, this friend of mine needed help, and I was like, "Well, I mean, I am telling you, according to the cards, you should not be involved in this situation, and they are also telling me that I should not be involved." And the way that it was described was, like, hungry. Like it wanted this person's energy, but it was almost like I used to have a really good analogy for it, but it was almost like when if you imagine like not the Conjuring film. What's the one with it's the guy who plays Ed Warren Insidious. You know how they're like wandering around in the fog with the
Mm.
lanterns? Okay, so
Mhm.
it's almost like if you imagine that and, like, me sitting with my cards and, like, having a Lord of the Rings moment where, Sauron suddenly sees Frodo because I was fucking around and I was asking more questions and I was like, "Well, what else can I find out?" I was like, "I don't wanna be involved, but, like, I'll just sit over here in my corner and see what I can see," but I drew its attention, and it took weeks to
Mhm.
get rid of that energy because I was not in a good place already. And whatever this thing was, it's attracted to that kind of like low energy. It's like a free meal to it. Like if I keep referencing Slimer from the Ghostbusters too, but you know how he's just like constantly hungry, constantly eating. It's like that was food for it. And I think that if this scenario was put in the hands of someone who was religious, it would be considered demonic because I did
Mhm.
experience changes to my thought patterns that are it was different than what I have when like I call it trauma brain or PTSD brain where like I can feel my mindset shifting and my thoughts changing where it's darker versus how I normally think. But this was something completely other. It wasn't like it wasn't PTSD and it wasn't me, it was something else that was, like, influencing to a degree, and once I kind of figured it out, it took, like I cleansed my entire house, I cleansed my body, I went outside my house and cleansed my house outside my body, it was an entire process, and then to the point where I had to be like, "I cannot be involved with this, period. Like, I am really sorry. I want to help you genuinely, but this is not something that I can be involved in because I am not strong enough." Or that sounds icky. I don't like the way that was phrased, but I don't have a better way to word it. So, that's
Yeah.
You weren't emotionally equipped to deal with it at that time.
Yes, thank you. That's a better way to say it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, I think that one could have been labeled demonic if somebody else had experienced that, or if someone more religious than me, because I'm not I'm not religious, spoiler alert. Uh, um, yeah, I think that would have easily fallen into the demonic entity ranks because it was a nasty,
Yep.
creepy crawly thing.
Savannah, what have you run into?
Um, before leaving or after?
Your choice.
Oh, man. Um, before leaving the church, some crazy stuff, some crazy things. I know I've told Carly the story about the levitating woman. Um, that's something I've seen happen during with a person who had an attachment that she actually it happened to her multiple times. It wasn't just that one time. Um, I've seen that. I have there I mean, I did this like regularly for years. So like I mean, I would like, you leave from cheerleading at the football game and then you're at somebody's house dealing with what demons. So I have so many things. They kind of blur together. I've seen people speak in languages that they don't know, shouldn't know. Um, Once when I was overseas, a woman who only spoke a tribal language began to have fits and looked at me and said my name in perfect American English. And so that was a little call out there. That was pretty terrifying. I was shook up over that. Um, I've encountered a lot in my short 28 years of life. I've encountered many things. It dies down though once you remove yourself from the religions that kind of hyper focus on it. Imagine that. You separate yourself from that and those things don't really follow. Not often. It's very rare now that I run into something where I'm like, we need to do some work here. Like this, we need to deal with things.
So do you feel like that religious group is manifesting these things, or that these things are just drawn to that group because they already have this belief in it?
I believe it's a little bit of both. I believe both things are happening. Definitely, there is definitely a manifestation that occurs within hyper charismatic. I was Pentecostal, apostolic, holiness, sects, and even Catholicism, because Catholicism, like that's the exorcist. You're going to go to a Catholic priest. Um, so both. It's weird. It's like Catholics and Pentecostals, and then like everybody else is kind of in between. But these two people got demons. Like you're gonna go to them for help. I definitely believe that in a lot of cases, the reason that exorcism helps is because you believe in it. And they've done studies on this where people have undergone exorcisms just because they believed they needed it and they're fine. This isn't proof that exorcisms work, but it is proof that if you believe in something hard enough, it's almost like a spiritual placebo, and sometimes that's what you need to get through whatever is going on or to deal with, your own stuff internally. You might need that external situation. But I do also believe that when you fear something, then if that thing exists, it's coming to you. It's not going to go find the atheist down the street because the atheist down the street doesn't really believe in that. But you being terrified to go around the corner because there might be a demon, where do you think the demon is going to go?
Mhm. Mhm. I always say that a lot of what I do is take away the fear from people's paranormal
Mhm.
experiences, and it's kind of that same concept that, like, once you explain that it's not a monster coming to grab your heels, it's not a
Mhm.
demon. This was like, here is from my understanding what I think is happening in this scenario, then it's like, "Oh, well, that's not scary," and it kind of takes
Yep.
away a level of
Yep.
that power, because there is something to be said for
Yes.
fear itself. Fear is an incredibly powerful emotion. Actually, Savannah and I were just talking about this in witchy
Yep.
terms, because we were talking along the lines of Philip, that if the Philip experiment, that if you can believe something that strongly, then what can't
Mhm.
you create for your life? And my point was that it has always been much easier for me to believe in the scary things than to believe that
Mhm.
good things can happen. And a lot of that is trauma. Like, that's I believe that
Yeah.
bad things can
It's
happen
religious
because,
conditioning
surprise.
too.
Yeah, it's religious conditioning and it's trauma that, like, yeah, like, religious conditioning really does teach you that terrible things are gonna happen, and you have to pray to God to save you, right? And on the flip side, my human experience has been that the scariest things that I can think of actually have happened time and time again. So, like, I believing that good things can happen is an extra challenge. And so it's that extra level. Like, this is the paranormal version of, like, peeling back that fear and being like, see, it's not a demon. It's just a sad little ghost in the corner who wants to have a chat or whatever. But taking the fear away takes a lot of the well, I guess if we wanna keep referring to it as food sources, but it takes away what they feed off of. There isn't there isn't any reason to come to you if you're not afraid of it anymore. So, it's like the thing that goes bump in the night, you're just like, "Shut the fuck up, Jeremy, I'm sleeping." You know? I name every bad thing Jeremy.
You're not the only person I've heard say that about, bedtime, and it's like, "No, guys, go away, I'm trying to sleep,
Yep.
get out of my room."
Yeah, no, I legitimate like, I'll have ghosts. It's when I'm most open is at nighttime when I'm sleeping because 'cause I'm not distracted and I'm not blocking everything out, so the ghosts will be like, "Oh, look, we can get her attention now." So I'll wake up and be like, "What the fuck? Go away." It's like, I will speak to you in the morning." That's like my house rule is no talkie before coffee. So, ghosts, if you wanna get my attention, fine. It's like a thing that we have. You're allowed to get my attention, and after that, you had better fuck off because I don't sleep like a normal person, so how very dare.
What were you were saying about the witchy application of all this? It makes me think of the intro to spell work that you see in a lot of coursework, where you start with a very small, very basic spell that has a very minor effect, but
Mhm.
one that is easy to achieve.
Mhm.
Because once you build that confidence that this is working and it can work, you can build up to greater effects.
Yes. Yeah, and actually in recent times, so the 2 people who've had to hear this the most often are probably Joy and Busy, but, like, there was a long period of time where my cards I wasn't posting about cards on my account, but, like, I was still reading, and they were like, "You need to have hope, you need to think about good things," and I was like, "Okay, well, I need you to give me something good that is
Mhm.
not followed by something bad so that I can hold that in my mind," because, like, at that point in time, the only like, I would have good moments, but I also didn't trust them because my good moments are almost always immediately followed by some earth-shattering, terrible event, and so something good happens, and I legitimately panic about it because I'm like, oh god, what is coming next?" And so it was this thing that I had to work on getting over. I'm still working on this. So, like, I have lists of good things that have happened when bad things didn't happen now so that I can go back and be like, "See? this time a good thing happened and the bad thing didn't follow it. So it's like it is retraining your brain. But yeah, I used to say that exact same thing. I was like, I just need one example where something goes right and I don't feel like my world is falling apart so that I can hold on to that like a kernel of hope or a roadmap to say I did this, I could do this again. And that's a bummer for me. But here we are, better, almost, sort of.
Now, Savannah, your screen name is That Witch Up the Holler. Are you a practicing witch as well?
I am, yes.
Can you elaborate on how you practice, what type of magic you practice, anything like that?
Sure. So publicly, what I put out the most content about is Appalachian folk magic. My family is from Appalachia, and that's pretty much it. Has been from nowhere else. So Appalachian folk magic is kind of like the meat of everything that I throw out, relating to a lot of kitchen witchery, green witchery, just granny magic, home kind of thing. So if you go look me up, that's what you're going to find. But that is not the entirety of my practice by any means. I definitely have my high magic, alchemy, deity work stuff hidden away, and I don't tell everybody about it because I feel like I have to keep it to myself, just as a super sacred spiritual thing. I don't know. It feels like it adds a little more power to it, that it's like mine. Then again, that could be religious trauma, and I'm afraid, maybe I'm just afraid to proselytize. I don't know. Um, but yeah, the bulk of what I share with others is relates to folk magic.
Well, it makes sense that there would be something about your practice that you want to keep just for yourself. And I think that's what we run into on the internet mostly is that not everything has to be shared.
Yep. Yeah, keeping your personal practice personal. There's an account that I love. It's the Cemetery Witch, and she lives in an actual graveyard in the UK. I'm obsessed. Like she has like the gatekeeper's house or whatever. It is gorgeous.
Jealous.
It is it's everything. But recently she put up a post about whether or not to share pictures of your spells or your ritual work. And I haven't shared anything like that for a long time, but I used to put together boards with the ingredients without them put together. So like I would lay out what I was using and the purpose that I was going to give to them without doing the entire thing because yeah, not everything belongs on the internet, and there are times when your personal practice it needs to be sheltered a bit more, especially because I know that Savannah has
Yes.
a lot of the same problems with scam accounts, even more so. Mine have died down
Mhm.
recently. I haven't been posting about tarot for a long time, so but I know that she's facing that same issue that made me be like, well, fuck this and fuck you. So yeah, it
And it's always frustrating when you go to report those accounts and Instagram comes back and says, "Oh no, this seems legit."
No, no
yeah,
violation. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. TikTok does the same thing. They say there's nothing against community. There's no community guidelines, violations, blah 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 blah. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a. But I love your kitchen witchery videos. I also love your Farmer's Almanac Zodiac series that you
Thank you.
do. I just think that those are so, and I don't know why. Actually, I do know why, because the zodiac symbols just it's been explained to me in a few ways that make sense now, but like my birth chart has me as a triple Aries, and I have never met anybody less like a triple Aries other than I'm very creative, but like, the traditional signs just don't really match. And so I love it when people are doing similar things but with different tools so that I can say, "Yes, this makes sense to me," because me being I am stubborn sometimes, but me being stubborn and like a giant bitch just does not track with my with my life experience. So those are always fun to watch. But the kitchen witchery, because I feel like most people don't realize how much magic they're doing in their day-to-day lives, just like
Mhm.
I mean, having a cup of coffee, even if it's just like this is your morning routine, to have a cup of coffee by
Yeah.
yourself while you read a book, that is your morning ritual. And most people don't want to use the word ritual, but like I get grumpy as shit if one of my kids come in before I'm
Yes.
ready to parent and they interrupt my coffee time. And I'm like, well, but
Yep.
this is my time for me to want to be alive.
It's
So,
sacred.
this is this is how I summon the will to parent all day.
Man, the Old Farmer's Almanac is really an underutilized item in witchcraft.
It really is, and it's a shame.
I think it's because it takes a little extra work to use it.
Mhm.
Could you expand on how you use it in your own practice?
Sure. So some people actually get upset with me for even calling it magic. They're like, "Well, that's just what we do." I was like, "Yeah, it is what we do, but what we do is magic." I go by the astrological signs. Um, my grandparents are the ones who taught me how to garden when I was a little girl. I would stay with them in the summers in the hills, and they would teach me how to garden, and I'd be like, "Well, let's go plant some tomatoes," and my papa would be like, "Absolutely not. The signs are not right." And I'm like, "We gotta wait for the moon to do a thing in 2 days." But he was right. He was like, so where I draw the majority of mine is the way that my grandparents and all of everybody back home, the way that they use it is following the astrological signs of the moon, to know when is the best time and when for planting or harvesting or canning or baking or fishing or cutting my hair for whatever. So that's what I use it the most for, is to follow the astrological signs of the moon. And I will not put seeds in the ground if the signs ain't right. It's not gonna happen.
I'm just curious, what is the best astrological sign and moon phase for canning?
For canning,
Yeah.
there are several signs you can can. Sometimes it gets tricky because there's specific rules for specific things you're gonna can, and it depends on which old person you're talking to. The the biggest rule is absolutely never when the signs are in the bowels. And sometimes not when they're in the feet either, because then it's gonna stink for whatever reason. Usually during a fiery sign is when you're gonna want to do any baking or canning, eh, as a
Hmm.
general rule of thumb. There's a bunch of little specifics. I wrote a whole little ebook and guide show off when you should do, like under each sign, what you should be doing. But it can get super specific and it can get a little extra sometimes, and I think it's better to just not restrict yourself entirely. I know that's easy to do, that's easy for me to do, and I'm like, "Whoa, I missed the phase. I guess I can't do anything." Like, maybe don't do that. It's but it is a good guide. Like, it is nice to live by the moon and under, kind of in harmony with everything else going on around you.
I was gonna say that's the more natural way to live anyways, and I spend a lot of time thinking that the way that we live as humans now, like the reason that we're all so massively unhappy is because none of us are meant to actually live like this. And like maybe we would all feel a lot better if if we were living by the wheel of the year like we used to, instead of by this calendar that some fucker somewhere along the way decided that this is what it is and you have
Just
to be
made up.
productive. Yeah, yeah, it is made up, but the idea that we have to be productive, the same level of productivity all
Mhm.
through the year is
Yep.
exhausting, and it doesn't leave any room for the times when you are fucking weary and need a chance
Yep.
to rest and recuperate. So, like, even one of my favorite decks to use is called the Halloween Oracle, and there is a card in there, and the card is winter, and it's a sacred pause. It's similar to the Four of
Mm.
Swords in that when you get it, like, you need to fucking
Yep.
stop and rest. And I get those cards
Yep.
constantly, and they annoy the shit out of me because I'm like, what do you think I'm doing? I'm always resting. I'm tired of resting. I just want to live my life. But the fact is, we get those messages because we are not meant to be this busy all of the time.
Yep.
There really is a season to do things in, and we are living in opposition to nature. You know,
Mhm.
maybe one day Mother Nature will rear her head and we'll all pay the price. I hope not. That sounds like an apocalypse movie waiting to happen. But still, you know, it feels like a more intentional way of living where you are looking at what would be good for the earth at this time. I want a can. Is it a good time for that?
Yep.
You know?
It's a connected way of living,
Hmm.
not just to people, not
Mhm.
just to your work or whatever you can produce for someone else. It's connection to everything around you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. It makes us happier. And I feel like we should all return to that
Does.
way. Money's fake anyways, so let's all just go back to pretending like it's not a fucking thing. That would be great for all of us sitting here can probably agree.
It really would.
So let's see, money's not real, time isn't
Money's not real.
real.
Yep. Well,
None of it's real.
none of it's real. And I have a lot of money anxiety just in general, but I made so many pop culture references already today. But I watched the movie Leave the World Behind on Netflix, and like it was like information that I already had in my head that, like, if the grid went down for whatever reason, like, what is the money in your bank account going to do you any good? That money is not real. You don't have that in your hands. If I couldn't access my bank account today, then
Yep.
okay, I guess I don't have any money. It's like it's not real because banks borrow it and spend it anyways. So legitimately, your money isn't your money. So there you go. That's my fix for money trauma on this ghost episode that we're doing.
Oh, so now we're gonna have this fractured money trauma spirit that you have to exercise from your room there.
I probably fucking would. Yeah. Traumatized money me is like a whole mood. Like that bitch needs to sit down and be quiet because she hasn't learned that money is fake yet. One day. One day.
It's one of those things you can intellectually know, but not feel because it still has such an impact on your life.
Yeah, but it's interesting to me the level, like I feel like more and more of these conversations are happening recently where people are willing to look a little bit more outside of the mainstream thought processes, even in terms of the paranormal.
Mhm.
Because I feel like even just a few years ago, people really wouldn't have wanted to hear that you're the ghost, you're the problem, your house is haunted because you're stressed, you know? And but I feel like I feel like the something has shifted to make these conversations more palatable for the general audience to have, because like I remember a different time when I accidentally haunted my house in Florida with a shadow person that my kids saw, and I was so freaked out about it because I was like, "What is happening?" And I talked to somebody else, and I was like, "Seriously, like, I don't understand what's happening." And the answer was that it was me. I was manifesting that because of my stress levels, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, "I feel like I shouldn't even like, why am I fucking around with the paranormal if I'm actively creating shadow people?" But it's just a part of the process, and understanding that humans are the cause of a lot of hauntings is just as important as understanding that that doesn't make it any less real. It's just the origins are different than you thought it was. So, like, I
Mhm.
have been the cause of hauntings. I'm sure that I have investigated or experienced hauntings that were the cause of somebody else being the problem. You know, I've talked to ghosts that were a soul splinter where they could only tell me their moment of trauma and nothing else about their lives. And then I've talked to ghosts who can tell me the whole thing because they made peace with it, and for whatever reason they're happy just chilling out in their ghost state. Like, you know, I don't have any answers, but I enjoy the conversation to say, "Hey, isn't this fucking wild? I'm a ghost and I'm alive."
Well, I feel like it's not just ghosts that are manifested by people. It's all kinds of things, cryptids, UFOs. Well, some UFOs, not all, but still, we are just projecting our own internal ecosystem outwards.
Mhm. Yeah.
But no, if this is a good place to stop, let's go ahead and just tell everybody where everyone can locate you. Where can
Mhm.
people find you, Carly?
You can find me at carly.latham on Instagram and TikTok sporadically. um, yeah, that is the best place to keep up with me is carly.latham. I'm the most active on Instagram. So that is, if you want to talk to me, that's the place to hit me up.
We'll plug your podcast too, because that's where I found out about Savannah.
Yes. So you can listen to me have more conversations like this with my co host, Melissa, the Ghost Doctor. Our podcast is called Death Becomes Us. We are interviewing interesting people within the paranormal, and it has been eye opening and so much fun to be a part of. And you can also hear me every Friday on Campfire Tales of the Strange and Unsettling as part of their Splinter show, Camp Divination. So we are pulling cards on the cases that Jordan and Ryan cover every week. They are coming to me with the questions that they had, and we're pulling cards on it. So those are the two places to find me on air.
And Savannah, where can people find you?
Okay, where can people find me? So sorry. You can find me on TikTok. I am at that witch up the holler. Holler is spelled with an E, not an A. Don't go to a scam account. Or on Instagram at it's that witch up the holler. And my link tree is on both of those, where you can find me on all the other places on the internet.
Does your link tree also have that booklet you were talking about, the ebook that you wrote?
It does. It does. It has the my Living by the Moon guide, and also a little monthly planner that I came up with for 2024 to help you follow the signs of the moon for the whole year.
Nice.
Check it out.
Well, thanks to both of you for joining me on tonight's show. This is a topic that we've been trying to talk about for what, like 3, maybe 4 months so far?
It's been a while. Yeah. Yeah. Super excited to have the chance to.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I also appreciate you guys going on so many sidebars with me because that's how a conversation with me goes. Come to talk about ghosts, end up talking about witchcraft.
Hey, at least they're related.
It's all
They
connected.
totally are.
It's all
It's
connected.
all it all goes together.
And on that note, for everyone out there listening, until next time, remember, stay weird.